Perfect. So just a little bit of a solution overview. I do want to give you a little actually tidbit on the blueprint solution that we were discussing before. So there's a couple different components that go into successfully implementing a solution in the education world, at least on our view. There's Microsoft Dynamics 365, which is the base solution. This is Dynamics 365. This is set up to sell 10 widgets at $10 a piece for $100, which obviously doesn't line up with what your industry looks at. However, the beauty of Dynamics 365 is it's very, very flexible. We can configure that system to line up with exactly what you need, and we can use pre-existing IP to pretty much give you a solution that's 70 to 80% of the way of where you need to be. And then obviously we layer on top our consulting services to bring you to about 100%. A lot of those pre-canned solutions that you see on the market nowadays, sure, they're great. They're pre-canned, they're plug and play, but they're only going to bring you to about 70 or 80% of where you need to be. And then to tweak those is incredibly, incredibly expensive if it's even possible, or if the company even lets you do it. So the mantra that we take on is we're going to give you a preset foundational solution that's going to help you reduce the cost of the implementation. It's going to help you reduce the timeline of the implementation. But we're going to be able to configure that further to 100% of what you need specifically for your environment, as opposed to group releases, whatever it may be with those pre-canned solutions. It's more of a 2021 way of looking at implementations without having to reinvent the wheel or configure everything from the ground up, while still giving you what you need. So as you can see, we have out-of-the-box Dynamics 365. We have the Microsoft Industry Accelerator. So Microsoft does have a free plugin. Well, I'm not going to call it a plugin, an overlay solution. All of these overlay solutions are configuration, not customization, so they don't break with updates or anything like that. They're built on the core of the system. And the Microsoft Industry Accelerator acts, in my opinion, what it does very well is it gives you a foundation for integrating an SIS system that I discussed before. I'll go a little bit more into that in detail. I'll even give you an example of something we did for a past customer who's now using the CRM as a front-end interface for the SIS system for certain roles throughout the organization. Last but not least, we have our CRM Dynamics Education Blueprint. This is that foundational solution that helps you reduce cost and timeline. This is something that we built on top of Dynamics 365. It's all part of the core platform, just like the Microsoft Industry Accelerators. This isn't third-party technology. This is configurations that we've done that we see commonly across your industry. So for example, the application record. That's something we see across every educational institution that we have. Even private high schools have that application record. So we said, hey, we want to build that into the overall solution, help you reduce the cost, help you reduce the timeline, so we're not rebuilding the application process from scratch. So it's 70% of where you need it to be. The remaining 20, 30% that we need to bring it to, that's where we layer on top of our consulting services. So picture one more silo on top of here, that's CRMD consulting services. Awesome. So I'm going to go back a bit and go through some of the highlights of what's in our education blueprint solution. So we have a little bit of a solution overview. I will not be showing all of this today. If I was to show you all of these different things, we'd be sitting here for the next 2 days in a demo, and you would probably have a great sleep about halfway through your day. So I'm gonna focus in on a couple things. One of them being the complete view of the student. Obviously, being able to see a 360 degree view of the student profile is incredibly important. Student case management, dashboard and reporting, event management, communications. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go through communication. I'm going to touch on the marketing module today and how you can do mass communications to either prospective or current students, because every school that I've dealt with has had that requirement. There is a LinkedIn integration for anyone out there that's looking at promoting MBA programs. I can tell you right now, I see maybe 5 or 6 of these a month come into my inbox of, hey, we're advertising through LinkedIn to try and recruit people to our MBA program. We can actually do a lot with the LinkedIn integration with Dynamics and LinkedIn. Obviously, LinkedIn's a Microsoft product, so you can imagine they're getting a little selfish with their functionality as well with Dynamics. We have student information system integration. I'll go through that a little bit further. The recruitment process, I will be showing you that today. Offers and acceptance process. I won't be going through that today. However, I will be showing you kind of where that starts out. Everyone has a different flavor to their acceptance process. Everybody has custom letters. Some people like sending out letters via mail. Other people like doing it all digitally. That's part of our solution, is tailoring that to line up with exactly how your acceptance process works. We have student engagement services, committee management, web bookings, so online portals, student self-service. Let's say, for example, someone needs to top up their meal card. They can top up their meal card through an online portal where they can go in, enter their credit card information, or their parents can enter their credit card information and refill that student card. The reason I say parents is I sure as heck wasn't paying for my meals, I'll tell you that much. We have customer self-service. We have web chat, virtual agents. So if you're interested in chat bots, which is the biggest thing in 2021, we can do that as well. Meeting portals, co-op and internships that we can track if you have those, as well as the contacts with the associated companies you're dealing with. So let's say, for example, you had an intern that came to CRM Dynamics, you're probably going to have the contact information for our COO, Dirk Schrader, who would be managing all of that. And we're back to our actual slide here. So I'm going to go into the demonstration now itself. I'm just going to leave a quick little gap there to see if anybody has any questions. And while I get set up, please feel free to throw your questions either in the chat or the questions and answer area. I have it up now and I'll keep my eye on it. Okay, we're going to end the show. Get rid of that. Perfect. Okay. Hey, Carrie, I know you have your mic. Can you just give me a little okay if you see my screen with Dynamics on it?
Yep, you are good.
Thank you very much. I've gone through 10 minutes without asking that before. So perfect. So first things first, I want to talk about a student that has submitted an inquiry to your school. Let's say, for example, they're submitting an inquiry saying, hey, I want more information about your school. They sent you an email, they've called, whatever it may be. They're not ready for an application yet, but they've inquired more information. So we may want to add them in as a lead. As you can see on the left-hand side here, I have what's called various entities. The entities represent a filing cabinet. Within that filing cabinet, we're going to have various files. Those files represent the individual records within the entity. So you're going to have a lead, which is the filing cabinet. And then within that filing cabinet, you're going to have all your various different files here that are different people within that filing cabinet, which is holding all your leads. Once again, not an application yet. This is somebody who's just inquired. I'm going to go back to my example, which is myself here, Evan Cosmides. I wish I was going through this process again. I pay a lot of money to go back to school. Unfortunately, I cannot. So let's look at this lead profile. So we have general information, first name, last name, mobile number, email address. All that good information that you need to collect about somebody is here. Now, I know there's some organizations that pull in this information from third parties. So, for example, the colleges, Humber being one of them, will pull a lot of their prospective students in through a platform called OCAS, or I think it's Ontario Apply Online or something like that. We can actually pull in that information through their API and create leads that people can follow up on. We can even create applications, we can create contacts, however your organization manages that, we can pull in information from that third party. If this is coming in from your website, for example, a web form, no problem at all. We can pull that information from a web form. However you're getting this information, there's probably a way that we can get it into the system. Worst comes to worst, we do an Excel import. There's lots of different ways. I've still yet to get stumped on importing information if the information is available from the third-party system you're pulling from. So as I mentioned, we have general information, a description, maybe an address, because we want to look at if they're international, et cetera, et cetera. Now, a lot of schools do have that. Is this an international student? Are you, if in Canada, I see a lot, are you First Nations, et cetera, et cetera. So we can actually capture all of that by adding in fields that you would need and specific tidbits of information that you would need. Not very hard to do. Dynamics makes it very easy to customize. As a matter of fact, with a little bit of training, you could probably add in fields that you needed to add and you don't have to lean on us. That's how easy Microsoft really makes it. So as you can see, we have a process flow up at the top, the orange bar that I have my mouse on right now. This is a set of steps that are built into the overall process that help keep consistency throughout your organization. So as I mentioned before, this person is not necessarily ready for an application. They may need some guidance towards, hey, is this the right school for you? If so, then apply. We can qualify them and guide them. Once we're done this stage and we're ready to move on to an actual application and create a contact, we can click qualify. What that's going to do, it's going to create a contact. It's going to create a application record if you want it to. It doesn't always have to. So moving on from the lead, Evan is now a person that, has said, hey, I love your institution. I'm ready to sign up for it, et cetera, et cetera. Here's all my information. We can even do lead scoring if you would like to do lead scoring. So how interested is this person? Are they interacting with our content, et cetera, et cetera? We can track a lot of that and obviously pull the leads that are most interested or most likely to convert into applications to the very top of your list, and you focus your time on those people that are the most engaged in your content. There's a lot of different ways you can slice and dice that and really narrow in where you should be focusing your time. Okay, so now Evan has gone through the lead process. He's decided he would like to attend your institution or at least apply for it. He may not be good enough. Okay, so I'm going to pull up Evan here. Oops, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to all my contacts. Okay, so now I have pulled up a contact profile. So you're going to notice some things. I have a lot of information on here. As we call it, the 360-degree view of the customer. You can see here's the lead that this contact profile came from. So we've obviously linked it back to where it came from. If there was a recruiter that convinced them, they're going to be linked against that lead as well, and maybe they get credit for actually the person going through to an application if they are eventually accepted. We have all the general information that I mentioned before. And as we go down, we have a contact type. So I always like to spend some time here. So on a contact type, you can see we have various different kinds of contacts. We have, oops, I'm sorry, let me scroll back up to the top. We have alumni, someone who's already graduated. We have donors, we have faculty, friends, guests, instructors, organizational contacts, parents, siblings, staff, students, and a lead. What does this mean? Obviously, we have the contact profile for the student. So this is Evan's contact profile. This will follow him for the rest of his life, that he is in your system. So if Evan's already graduated, he may be an alumni, but he may also be a donor because he may have done both. So we can multi-select that and really classify what Evan's done and capture what type of alumni or what type of student or what type of prospect Evan really is. So in this case, we might say that he is let's just say for now, he's a student lead, whatever it may be. So as you can see, we've classified them as two different types. His preferred language may be English, and the reason why we've added this here is we do see a lot of cases where different recruitment officers speak different languages, and we have routing rules of contacts or guidance counselors or whatever it may be, just based off of language qualifications of the actual guidance counselor. So on the other side, the case management side, where, for example, we have guidance counselors, you'll notice that we do have preferred language over there as well. The reason being is you may want to route that to a guy. Let's say, for example, you're dealing with a student that speaks Mandarin, for example. You want to obviously route that person to an agent that speaks Mandarin if that is their first language. It makes them feel comfortable, and you want to track all that information. We have a preferred contact method. So how does this person like to be contacted? Are we going to allow marketing emails for everyone in Canada that we can help you manage CASL compliancy with your marketing material? Obviously, that's very important. Fines have been handed out to date, so it's not just a myth that CASL compliancy is around. Now that I've kind of gone through some of the general information, I just do kind of want to go through what that 360-degree view of the customer really is. So it's all the information that you need to see at the tip of your fingers. This summary tab is more application focused, so it's more recruitment officer focused or application officer focused. And as you can see, we have things like the applications. We can capture family ties here. So being able to household or family is a very, very important thing to many schools. And I'll give you an example. I went to Bishop's University, small liberal arts college in Quebec. However, if you have a family member that went there, you are probably going there. So what they like to do is actually capture households. So in this case, they may capture that Angelo Cosmides is my father and the relationship is a parent. If I was to go into Angelo Cosmides' contact record, as you can see here, he is going to be listed as an alumni and he's going to be listed as a parent because I am now applied into that school and he used to go there. So it really gives you that map of the whole family, the connections you have, and everything like that. Give it a second here. As I mentioned before, we obviously have the lead that it's related back to. We have any registrations that the person has made. So let's say, for example, they registered for an open house. We want to capture that as a registration. Let's say, for example, the person registered to try out for the football team. We want to capture that as a registration. And all of those registrations will be housed on the main profile. Any affiliations that this person may have. So they may be employed by a specific organization, whether within the school or out of the school, and you may want to track that. The high school that they attended, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot that we can track there, as well as addresses. So we have the ability to manage multiple addresses. Think about this. Every contact has its own address. So let's say, for example, I don't live in the same place as Angelo Cosmides, which is the parent listed on my account and the family ties. I'm just going to quickly refresh this because for some reason it's not showing all the data. then I can actually track an address against my name, and I can track an address against Angelo, who is my parent that is listed on the record. The reason why you want to do that, a lot of the times the parents are paying the bills. The student could live at one place within the school, but you may want to invoice the parents in another place, and you want to be able to track all of that. Perfect. We can, oh, sorry about this. We may also have registrations for terms. So if somebody's registered for a term, we can actually track which terms they're registered for. We have event registration. So this is what I was referring to before. If somebody registered for an event like an open house, we can actually have that stored against their contact profile, so you can access that pretty quickly. Student success teams assigned to the person. So let's say, for example, somebody calls in and says, well, I need to talk to my guidance counselor. I haven't talked to them in 2 years. I can't remember who the heck they are anymore. Well, guess what? We can see that Lucy is his or her career advisor, and Mike is the student success manager. So we can say, hey, let me set up an appointment with Mike for you right here, right now, and you can deal with Mike. Here's your appointment for 2:30 tomorrow. We'll send out a confirmation email to go along with that. Survey responses. So if you're sending out surveys through the marketing module, we can actually capture those responses here on that 360-degree view of the customer. And pretty much any information that you find relevant, we can add to the screen. Microsoft makes the screen fully flexible, very, very easy to edit. So if I wanted to move this below the lead, then move the family ties over here and the contact information down here, and I needed 3 more fields on the contact information, it's very, very easy to do with minimal training. We can easily teach you how to do that, or you can give us a call. Our support department can help you out. Awesome. So one of the other things that I want to point your eyes to is the timeline. This is one of my favorite features in Dynamics 365. What is the timeline, you may ask? The timeline is essentially a snapshot of everything that's gone on with this contact and the whole entire history of them working with your organization. So in this case, you may see, as you know, Outlook is a Microsoft product. The integration between Outlook and Dynamics 365 is phenomenal. You can track emails to contacts, applications, accounts. You can pretty much track emails anywhere that you want to track them or that you feel is relevant. That being said, if I track an email to an application for Evan Cosmides, that will actually roll up to his contact record. So I can even see emails tracked against applications against the contact record. So here's a good example of an email that was tracked. We can see an email from Mike Speed, well, technically this would be Evan Cosmides if the demo data was correct, but essentially Evan sending in a doctor's note via email. I can drop down this tab, I can see the entirety of the email thread, and I can actually open up the attachment for the email directly from Dynamics without ever leaving this screen. Some of the other information that I can see is if a case was resolved. Let's say guidance counselor opened up a case for a problem. If I have tasks associated with the person, so for example, can you please upload this, or request for information, a task was created, how do I get more details about your career advancement programs? This was an email that was sent in and tracked against the profile, so that I can see the entirety of that email thread directly on the timeline without ever having to leave here. We can also see if they filled in surveys and a wide range of other things like task management. For example, if you have a task against the person, you can mark it complete against the timeline, and we can even filter by all the tasks. So if I wanted to just see, if I'm looking for a specific email, I don't want to look through all of this. I'm not going to call it junk because a lot of it's probably helpful information, but I just want to see that the emails that have come in and been tracked against this contact. I can select emails. As you can see, the only things that are showing now on my timeline are the emails that have been tracked. There's lots of different ways that you can slice and dice the timeline data to see exactly what you need to see when you need to see it. I've used other systems in the past. This is the most well thought out and well built timeline type system that I have seen ever. Microsoft does a very, very good job of this. Not to mention, I can't show it today, but the actual tracking from the Outlook side is seamless. I do about 40% of my work as a sales rep through Outlook. I don't even have to open up my CRM on certain days, especially for things like task management. It all integrates back to Outlook. If you look at appointment tracking, let's say I set up an appointment with a prospective student, I'm going to show them around. Well, guess what? If I create that appointment within Dynamics, it's going to show up in Outlook, your Outlook calendar, and vice versa. If I create one in the Outlook calendar and I track it, it's going to show up in your Dynamics on the timeline for that person as well. So it's truly a seamless integration. Let's say, for example, I have an activity list that I'm working off of, for example, a task list. So in many cases, I may be going down and saying, confirm event details. That's a task that I have open right now. Okay, I'm done my task. Let's mark that task complete. Perfect. This task list will actually show up in your Outlook side of the house in the tasks. There's a lot of improvements coming to the task area of Outlook, just so that you know. And it's going to become even more seamless as time goes on when those updates are released. However, it's still very good. It reflects just as your other tasks would in Outlook. And when you mark it as complete in Outlook, it marks as complete in Dynamics too. Perfect. So I'm just going to jump back to my student profile. So I've gone through a lot of the general information that you probably want on the front screen, just giving you a snapshot of the actual student profile. Once again, this can be edited. And as I mentioned before, this 360-degree view of the customer is set up primarily for recruitment agents and things like that. Your guidance counselor is probably going to see a different thing. Your student academic advisor is probably going to see a different thing. And we can actually have what's called various forms. Each form is specific to a role. So if the student guidance counselor sees different things than the recruitment officer, well, guess what? They're going to get a different screen layout than the recruitment officer with relevant information to them. So we can create as many forms as you need to see. Let's say you have 20 different roles and 20 different people need to see different relevant information. We can have 20 different layouts of this screen. Not to mention we can have tabs on each one. So if I was to go to the student profile, this is, I'm now switching gears from a recruitment officer to a current student. Actually, before I do that, I want to go through the application record, and my apologies there, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. So with Evan Cosmides, once we have a contact record, he needs to actually go through an application process to be accepted into the school, right? We review that application process. Once that application process is done, we can accept or we can decline the prospective student. So Evan actually has an application already created against it. For the sake of time, I created this earlier. Evan is applying for the 2020-2021 fall term. So I'm going to open up that application record, and you're going to notice that we do have a business process flow on the top of the application record as well. Why is that? You want to create consistency throughout your organization through business process flows and set and define processes that everyone throughout the organization uses for every prospective student. So in this case, we may have an incomplete application. As we all know, the application process does take a little while. When I was going through it, I found it to be a very long, drawn-out process. However, obviously, there's a lot of necessary information that you need to collect. So we do have an incomplete application area in case a student does start the application and doesn't complete it and wants to come back later. Many of the online self-service portals, by the way, there's an online self-service portal that goes with this. I'm not going to have time to touch it today, but it's just a website where people can go in and submit their applications and track their applications, pay for things through with their credit card, whatever it may be. We can do all that through an online portal that is Microsoft technology, so it's all already seamlessly integrated with the Microsoft platform. But as I said before, we have an incomplete application for that reason. A lot of times on the website, you can do half the application, save it, then come back and complete the last half at a later date. We can also do things through the marketing module where if somebody half applies, we can send an email to them maybe 2 days after with triggers, basically saying, hey, we saw that you half applied, log back in to finish the remainder of your application. So on the application, we have a unique identifier, an application ID. We can either jump on or piggyback off of the application ID system that you already have or that you're already currently using, or we can create a net new sequence of numbers and start from there. It really depends on what your organizational needs are, and we can make pretty much anything with prefix, suffixes work as well. We have a contact, so who's actually applying. As we mentioned before, this is Evan Cosmides. They make it really easy to drop down and see all the information regarding Evan Cosmides. A currency that Evan deals with, or we could have a preferred language if that's what you want to do. When are they looking to actually apply? So this might be this semester, next semester, whatever it may be. These are editable option sets. A description and various other information as well. I think I am looking at yes, my apologies. I was looking at the wrong form. I mentioned that we could have multiple forms for multiple different types of people. I was looking at just a standardized one. Here's the actual application form that I want to point your eyes to. My apologies on that. So obviously we have an applicant. What academic period are they applying for? So in this case, Evan's applying for the 2021 fall term. That is an actual term that we have listed in the system and that we can strap applications against. So if we wanted to see, show me all the, if we wanted to filter and say, show me all the prospective students that are applying for the 2020-2021 fall term, we would essentially just go up here to our advanced find. I'm sorry, I popped up a window somewhere else. And what the advanced find will allow us to do is essentially use filters to search through the data. I don't have it turned on, that's why. So it will allow us to use filters to basically sort through the data within the system. So we can say, show me all prospective students, not current students, but prospective students that are applying for 2021 fall term. Pull that list and send them a mass email about, COVID regulations for open houses or something like that. That's actually a use case that I saw. I had an educational institution say to me, we need to be able to create a list of all prospective students and let them know that we're not doing in-person open houses and that they can go here to do a digital open house, whatever it may be, at which time we were obviously tracking who was doing the digital open houses, who attended, who didn't, sending automated emails to the people that attended versus a different email to the people that didn't, saying, sorry, we missed you. There's a lot we can do with that. And the reason why I say that is it's very easy to slice and dice your data in Dynamics. If you set up the fields appropriately, you should be able to pretty much slice and dice any way that you want, pulling various marketing lists at literally within 2 minutes. I can create a marketing list of all prospective students that are applying to a specific term and attended an open house event. Very, very easy to do. We can have a rating. So is this person a hot, warm, or cold lead? If this person says, well, actually, I decided to take a year off now, they may be a cold lead, and we may want to mark this application as inactive. We have application information. So here's the general information about the student. This actually pulled over from the contact record, so you don't have to double fill out information. We just display information that we already have in the system. Why duplicate your information? Garbage in, garbage out is and I shouldn't probably, a little bit of a harsh statement, but if your data goes in and you're duplicating data and you're putting garbage data in, you're not going to be able to sort it. And that's what I mean by garbage out. So that's one thing to think out as you think through as you go through this process. What data do you already have? What data do you need? And what are we potentially duplicating that we shouldn't be duplicating? Perfect. So a lot of applications in 2021 have an application fee that goes along with it. Hence why you may have a lead that doesn't actually apply to your school. Usually there's a cost to applying, right? Like a service fee. Obviously, we got to pay those recruitment professionals too, even if we don't accept somebody. So we have application fees. Let's say, for example, we're not going to waive the application fees. Your application fee amount is $120. They can actually go in through that online portal that I discussed with you earlier, that self-service website where they log in with the username and password, and we have their profile tied to that. They can go in and they can actually pay using the payment gateway. So I just want to touch on payment gateway quickly. You already have a preferred payment provider. I'm going to name off some of the most common ones. Authorize.net, which is a Visa product. Moneris, Chase. There's a whole bunch of them out there. We can integrate with your payment provider and actually manage those payments, the invoices and everything, and the receipts through Dynamics 365. So you don't have to have a third-party disconnected platform to do all of that. So as you can see, we can capture the payment method, application fee, transaction ID. So let's say, for example, we send a transaction off to Moneris to get approved, or Authorize.net or Chase, and they send the application or the payment information back saying approved, et cetera, et cetera. We can actually capture the unique identifier for that transaction and tie the transaction record against the application. So we can quickly reference what transaction was responsible for paying this $120. Not to mention, all of that's going to get passed across to your accounting system. That's going to make your accountant's life a lot easier if all of this is coming across with transaction IDs and historic trails. If we waive the application fees, we can see when they were waived. We can see who waived the application fees, because you don't want just anybody waiving application fees, obviously. Conflict of interest. If I'm a recruitment officer and somebody says, well, I can't pay the application fee, but I'm picking your school, I may be inclined to waive that application fee. We don't want that. We want specific people approving this and specific people waiving the application fees as well. Previous education's a big one. We may want to capture what high school they went to so that we can see how many people from each high school have applied to their school. Let's say, for example, I'm going to use Ontario's focused schools, my high school, Villanova College. Let's say, for example, you have 20 applicants a year from Villanova College, but all your other schools average about 4. Well, guess what? You're going to probably try and figure out why Villanova College is sending so many students to your school and how we can increase that number, and how also go on the top of Villanova College. What's enticing them to promote your school, and how do we apply that to other schools, other teachers, other principals, other things like that, trying to promote recruitment directly from high schools and things like that. Because let's be honest, when I was getting recruited, I picked Bishops. I played football. It's a little bit of an anomaly. But I picked Bishops because they came to my school. They really pitched me on the idea of a small school. They pitched me on the football team. I had already pretty much made my decision as to where I was going to go before I even started looking into schools, because Bishops did such a good job of jumping in front of me before I even started my research. And they did that by finding out, we have quite a few students that attend our school from Villanova College. Maybe we should send somebody to their university open house. There's a lot more that I can discuss on that topic, how they recruited me. It was a very, very interesting process. If anyone wants to discuss anything like that, I'd be happy to talk about my experience as well as some of the other experiences we've seen with other schools as well. I know that's just as important as the actual CRM, and that we also come in from a consulting perspective and help with things like that. So we've seen pretty much everything from here to Timbuktu in the education world. We can provide a lot of valuable input on the best ways to actually help drive recruitment. We have extracurricular activities. So if you want to actually capture things that they're interested in outside of the actual, school itself. So basketball team, debate club, intramural volleyball. These may be 3 things that the student is very, very interested in and did at their current high school. You may want to show them the basketball facilities and the basketball team and introduce them to the basketball team coach. You may want to introduce them to the head of the debate club, and you may also want to invite them maybe to partake in an intramural volleyball game that may be going on that night. These are all things that you can do to entice students to come to your school based off of their interests, and you want your recruitment officers having their interests at the tip of their fingers so that they can speak to that. You're not going to get a student like me, at least when I was graduating, you weren't going to entice me based off of your academic this or that or what your lab looked like. You were going to entice me by, showing me what the football facilities were like because I was 18 and education was the last thing on my mind. You're going to show me what the football facilities are like, and you're probably going to get somebody to take me out to, to party a little bit afterwards type of thing. That's exactly what they did, and that's why they locked me in, and they knew what my interests were as they were bringing me out when they brought it in because I filled out a questionnaire before I went to visit them. Once again, we have a timeline on the application as well. You can track things against the timeline, et cetera, et cetera. How complete is their application? So if we're linked to an online portal, we can see how much of the application that they've actually filled out. And then we can say, has a supervisor approved this application, yes or no? Once we go through this process flow, so let's say, for example, we're done here. I've identified, blah, blah, blah. I figured out what other schools are looking at. I want to move to the next stage. It's as easy as moving to the next stage. If you have tidbits of information that the person needs to collect and they're not allowed to move to the next stage without collecting that. So for example, it might be validating their grades or something like that at high school. Well, you can actually have mandatory fields here that do not allow the person to move on to the next stage until this is done. So we've reviewed their documents, they've completed their application, we've reviewed their documents. Now we're going through our internal acceptance decline process. Once we're done that, we move on to decision made. From here, this is where we go into the actual acceptance process. And the reason why I'm not going to show this is because it's very highly tailored for every educational institution that I've worked with. Once again, you have a manual booklet. Guess what? We can send information to a print house that prints that booklet for you and then sends it out to the student automatically. So there still is automation, even in the old school way of doing things, which is the paperback way of doing things. And it's always nice to receive a paperback acceptance letter. Let's be honest here. It's kind of a cool thing to open up with your family and see that you got accepted and all that good stuff. So it would be nice to actually be able to track, did we send that out, et cetera, et cetera. If you do it digital, we can use a marketing module to help with all those automated emails, loading in your templates like the acceptance letter and getting all of that automatically sent out. When it comes to signatures and signing things back, if it's digital, we can integrate with Adobe Sign, we can integrate with DocuSign, you name it, we make that process very easy to get the signature. Me personally, as a sales rep, I find it very, very handy to be able to send digital documents. Sometimes it turns around my signed SOW, or in your case, a signed application, 2 days faster than it normally would if the person doesn't have a printer, which is becoming a very, very common thing in 2021. I got caught without a printer the other day, and I said, holy crap, that's the first time I've never had a printer in my life. So that's something to think about as well. Awesome. So that's the application side of the house. We have requirements and submissions. So what do we require from this person? In this case, we may require education. We may require their test scores, whatever it may be. This might be an English literacy test, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have approved requirements. So what is the team actually approved and moved to, hey, we accept this. So for example, you might approve the test scores. If you approve the test scores, they'll move into the approved requirements. This person had high enough test scores to get in. Last but not least, what are missing requirements? So this person did not upload their work experience. This may be for an MBA program. This person did not upload their work experience. Well, guess what? We know what their missing requirements are. We can trigger out an email saying, hey, we noticed that you completed your education. We noticed that you completed your test results and you submitted them. But we also noticed that you were missing your work experience. Please log back into your online portal and submit your work experience or proof of employment from your employer. Why is this handy? You can really focus in and automate pushing these application processes through and reminding people where they forgot, because a lot of the times they don't even realize they haven't completed the application process because it is a pretty tedious process. It doesn't matter which educational institution you're dealing with. It's not like filling out a contact us form. It's a lot more in depth than that. So let's really tell them what they're missing and how they can complete that. We have specific questions. So for example, for a business program, you may have a specific set of questions that you want to ask on the application. Guess what? We know that this is a business focused application. We can have these questions added in automatically. So why are you looking to pursue an education at our institution? What are the areas of interest outside of academics? Et cetera, et cetera. We can also have references that are captured in there as well. So I know for a lot of MBA programs, for example, they require references. If I was to go do one, I would need someone from my company to reference me to get in. I can actually capture those references here, and I can have people follow up on them. Awesome. So as we go further, we have application decisions. So has this person been approved or declined? If they've been approved, we can select yes. We can have funding, conditions, or if they were refused, we can have refusal codes as to why they were refused and send those refusal codes out. For example, English language proficiency test results are too low. So guess what? We have the refusal code. We know why they were declined. So we can sit there and say, hey, we send out an automated email and say, here's the reason code as to why you were declined. Go work on your English proficiency test results and get back to us once they're a little bit higher. We'd love to have you for the 2021-2022 school year. Awesome. So there's obviously a lot more to the application process than what I've shown here. As I mentioned, this is a baseline solution. This will get you 70% of where you need to be, and then we can bring you to 100 with the remainder. So some of the other things that we oftentimes see here is people actually uploading documentation to the various applications. We do have spots where you can upload documentation to the application process itself. We can store those documents within SharePoint or Dynamics itself. SharePoint's cheaper, easier way of doing it. It's a native integration. It doesn't require any configuration, and we can store those documents in a secure location linked against the actual application record itself. Okay, so I'm going to go back now to my student profile. So I've shown you recruitment stuff. Now I want to show you what guidance counselors may look at, financial advisors may look at, various other things like that. This is a current student that we have. So first thing you're going to notice right off the bat, this person already has a student ID. We can once again continue off the student ID format that you have in sequence or whatever it may be. And we can have prefix and suffixes added to the actual student ID. We can have their GPA displaying right off the bat if you have all of that calculated. We can have a current semester, a GPA for their major. This is versus their cumulative GPA. There's lots of different things that we can do there. We can see the applications. So what they apply for, a diploma. We can see the recruiting agency if you work with recruiting agencies that actually recruited the student, because I know that there's commissions that get paid out to a lot of these recruiting agencies. So we can actually track how many came in with the recruiting agency. It's funny because a lot of the educational institutions that I work with are looking to get rid of their recruiting agencies. Not get rid of them because they're doing a bad job, just because it's an overhead cost. So one of the goals that I had, and the reason why we added this in, one of the educational institutions we work with said, we want to reduce the number of contacts that have this recruiting agency tied against them, but we don't want to lose enrollment. Those are things that we can help you do through CRM. As a matter of fact, we can get a lot better than a lot of those recruiting agencies because of the marketing capabilities that you have through a marketing module in Dynamics 365. A lot that we can do there. Who is the recruiting agent that was actually responsible for recruiting this person, if that is the case? And then we can actually have registration. So did they register for anything? In this case, you can notice Evan registered for the 2020-2021 fall term. This school that I'm dealing with actually decided to accept Evan, which was the biggest mistake they ever made. Then we have a current program. What program are they in? In science and engineering. Current program level, so they may be an advanced placement if you do have that second tier classification. And then a student status, are they a current student? I know that we have a lot of students that actually put their education on hold, so they may be like an on-hold student. We also have maybe accelerated students that are doing 2 programs at once. So any classification that you can essentially have within your organization, this is a custom entity, so we can add any classification and any traits or characteristics that you want against that as well. Previous education, extracurricular activities. So for example, in my case, I would have football team here because I played on the football team for Bishops. I would have course history. So if you have a whole bunch of courses that you want to track, as well as the grades for those courses or test scores, for example, you can track all of that against the student profile. A guidance counselor may look at this quickly and say, okay, what's your course history? you're missing COM 102, you've done COM 101, which is the prerequisite. Okay, you should register for computer science 102. We can also see how they're doing. If the guidance counselor comes down and says, you're struggling for this, we may want to give you a tutor for this specific class because I noticed your test scores are falling. And we can use AI modeling to flag low test scores, flag students that do not have the right credits, et cetera, et cetera. Guidance counselors have access to all of this at the tip of their fingers. We can also see things like, are their fees overdue? Do they have financial aid as they go through their educational journey? Are they living on campus housing, or they might be living on off-campus housing? Do they have a meal plan? And then we can go a lot further with the meal plan on what type of meal plan do they have, how much does it cost, are they almost out if you use a credit system for your meal plan? It really depends on how you do that. And are they engaged in student associations? Obviously, marking which student associations and extracurricular activities they are associated with if you want to get a little bit more granular than that. I mentioned that we could also have files stored against profiles. As you can see, I have a grid for files. I have a document associated grid. If I had SharePoint integrated, which I do not in this case, I could actually upload any files against the student profile that can be accessed by whoever has security permissions to access those student files. That brings me to security permissions. You can have different security permissions for a guidance counselor, a financial aid officer, because financial aid officer may want to see the household income of that person, whereas you don't want the guidance counselor seeing that. So through security roles, we can control who sees what, and we can get as granular as field level. Awesome. So that is pretty much a very high level student profile. Now I want to talk about some of this information. Rarely do we ever see this information being centrally housed in Dynamics 365. And when I say that, I mean the course history, the test score specifically. Where do we see that housed? We normally see that housed in an SIS system like a Banner, for example. There's lots of other ones out there. I just use Banner because it's the one that we most commonly see, or Lucian, if you're familiar with that. So Banner, what we do is we pull in the information from Banner through an API, and we provide a one user interface that can be used for the student profile. So as this is updated in Banner, it's a live integration that feeds across into your CRM. Why is this important? Guidance counselors, financial aid officers, even if you're pulling information for somebody who's applying for an MBA and you need to see their past history, we can actually have a central interface, one central interface that's being used, so you don't have to log into Banner, then log into Dynamics, and then go back and forth between the two. We just integrate them and give you one screen, one 360-degree view of the customer, because I know the biggest complaint a lot of organizations have or educational institutions have is, I don't want to log into Banner, my SIS system, and I don't want to log into this recruitment system separate. Why not just have one interface for everything?